Hey, it's Macabre Derek back again with a video response, a rambling rant directed specifically at my boy Fritz. Who's Fritz, you might ask? Long story short, long term community member of Warhammer 40K. Really good tactician. Check out his channel, you can learn a lot. And he approaches games very much with utilitarian ideals. Well, I wouldn't end up going so far as to say min max. He's very much a gamer in mind. He likes to end up seeing the board and figuring out how things overlap. However, not so recent ago, he started getting into these videos where he was explaining, hey, I end up playing Dungeons and Dragons. I think I'll release some of the content, let people ruminate upon the things that end up entering his brain, that warped, twisted entity lurking inside his skull. The video I'm responding to is linked down below. Let's get to it. He ended up stating flat out, when I end up playing a wizard, these are the items I end up going with. These are the first things I buy with that, level 1, 2, 3, 4 bits of gold that you receive at the end of a dungeon. And a part of me died inside, Fritz. A part of me died. And I'm going to tell you why. First of all, if there's one thing you will never find in any game, IST, GM, Flight Intent, DM, whatever you want to call it, a game I run, one thing you will never find is the magic item shop. This mystical person who seems to have every magic item that you can want on the planet. It might just be, some low bar stuff. Oh, yeah, you might end up getting that scroll of magic missile, maybe that +1 longsword. Nothing that seems horribly broken. Except there's a problem that you'd end up tending to end up getting into hiccups with. Now, what he suggested was very much utilitarian pieces. This is what you want in substitution till you get Fireball. This is what you want. This is all pre-built. I have a lot of problems with this in that you're, first of all, basically selling players power. It's not earned. That item you have, that +2 longsword, if we're talking from my main man, quite frankly, the one I always hate is Ring of Protection. It's like, yeah, look at me, I got a new armor class. Fuck you. Actually, the big one's Bag of Holding, but that's another video for another time. The reason I don't like it is because what you're basically saying is that the world is ruminated with so much magic that you can do anything and there's really nothing stopping you outside of your coin purse. Why is that a problem? Well, first and foremost, it says that I want you to just take whatever magic items you can get and I'll be the final arbitrator, but yes or no doesn't end up mattering. Unfortunately, last time I checked, Excalibur wasn't exactly something that was bought off the back shelf. What you have in magic items is a item that can help push plot, an item that can give desire and intricacies. You have this ability to end up steering things on further down the line because of a magic item. Now, the way I typically run magic items is that I'll build stuff that is very powerful. I will openly admit that. However, you'll only end up grabbing, if you're lucky, you might have 6 magic items by level 9. Maybe. They're not common. I build magic as very uncommon. Why? Because suddenly now your sorcerer or your wizard or your cleric can really get over because this stuff is not expected. Usually when you end up taking a 3-story fall down the rocky slope and get ripped to shreds. If you survive that encounter, you're probably going to be laid out for a while. Probably going to be stuck in a sling, probably plenty of bed rest, fluids, and some guy with a hot knife trying to sear wounds shut while sticking you with a needle and a bunch of thread. This makes it so that consequences are harsh. So when you do have that cleric who's able to simply touch a person, their flesh starts to knit and bones realign and they are once again whole, that's a miraculous thing. It's something that not everybody sees every so often. So now all of a sudden the people around you see, oh, we got to keep an eye on this one. It elevates the players. It brings them above the commoner folk. But it gives an opportunity to sell. Now, when it comes down to magic items, if this is something that you can just buy over the corner shelf, well, in such a world, I would expect adventuring to be quite profitable, primarily because you're going into a dungeon to grab the items off the previous adventures and, sell those back. So it might actually be more worth it to be a marketer or entrepreneur in that regard. You get what I'm saying. Items of any kind, of any variety, should be able to help push the narrative, help build the narrative. And I have to ask, when you have a bunch of beans in a satchel that you can't shake too hard because they might explode, what is that adding? Outside of the use of, there's a substitution for a fireball. What does it add? Adds utility, okay, to the character, but what does that add to the character? What does that say about the character? Because if you've done this once, okay, that might be a novelty. If this has become your standard door operating procedure, well, if you're playing the same type of character over and over again, I'm guilty of that. I ended up building at least 15 different flavors of Necromancer. But what does it say? Let's take a non-magic item. One that's very near and dear to my heart. Black Onyx. Black Onyx is used in Animate Dead. And usually pretty tough to come across. It's not something you just pick up in shops. You go to that small town on the way to the next major city. I don't expect to end up being able to buy 500 gold worth of these gems. It makes it a very precious commodity. And in doing so, it also means now when I use it, I need to consider, is what I'm using it for worth it? When I can just say, I think I'm just going to end up putting in, 20,000 gold worth of black onyx, shove it all into this bag of holding, now it's non-issue. You miss out on the opportunity to tell some stories. Now, the story I ended up going through was the first piece of black onyx I found was off of a bugbear, believe it or not, part of his small hoard. It ended up turning out that when we ended up investigating further, he was part of a larger pack. This larger pack had managed to whip up a whole bunch of slaves, and, well, they were mining. Mining for what, you might add? Well, all of a sudden, we end up digging in, and we end up finding out that there's a gold mine. But they're having some difficulties because there's other gemstones of rarity in there. Now, they managed to get most of the major stuff out before they even got there, but there's still traces of it left. And you want to know who's best to end up working that mine? Those goddamn villagers that were mining it before. They know how to do it. All we need to do is slap some chains on them, grab the whips, and send them on in with a few picks. Mostly doing it by hand, wearing their fingers to the bone, most of their fingernails peeled off, scraping against the stone. Now all of a sudden, you got some interesting little tidbits, because are you a good person trying to help them out? Are you greedy, hoping for the mine? Is it that you obsess with power, such as my character, and wanted to end up taking the mine for yourself? I'll say this much. It's very interesting to be able to end up running that encounter, trying to work alongside, ironically enough, a paladin, a cleric, a rogue, and a barbarian. And all of these things end up coming to interesting moral decisions, interesting build-ups at different perspectives, stuff we can play around with, arguments amongst the players in character, which led to some really good dialogue moments. Now, all of this would have been missed if I could have just went to that back shelf and bought something as simple as Black Onyx. How much rarer is it to find a magic item in that regard? You lose out a lot when you end up taking these things that people want and just handing them, giving them out. Not thinking, okay, well, what can this do? What makes it special? Is when I know that it was the skeletons I end up creating that are mining slaves that were killed by the orcs, and making it so that the town ended up getting a large portion of all that gold and all those gemstones in order to help ease their suffering. Well, of course, I have my own agenda. The paladin was somewhat disgusted with it. It took quite a bit of convincing. That was an interesting discussion. That was an interesting bit of dialogue, something that elevated. Barbarian, on the other hand, spat at the very idea. We need to end up keep moving because we're just giving weaklings further chances, when reality, there was no strength to be built out of it. And when you are someone who is a consummate of strength, personal or otherwise, well, maybe so. The rogue, on the other hand, was looking at it and figuring out, how do I end up conning? Because he wanted to end up getting the most out of it. He was actually arguing on whether we should end up finding some way to help this pack that took over this slave mine. So many perspectives, so many character moments, so many build-ups, and figuring out the party dynamic. So much character build, all gained from a small item in the pouch of a bugbear. I want you to consider this and the stories that you could tell. If the players are out to grab something, they want something, they need something, how much you're selling out your own game and the opportunities to make wonderful stories. If for 100 gold, here's your +1 bow. This is Macabre Derek, and if you end up enjoying my little rants, press the like button, end up pressing the subscribe button. I don't know, press some other buttons. I'm sure there's some videos going on, you know. Hell, they're probably right over there. Check them out. I'll see you soon.